Welcome to OverBoost 30. OverBoost is a podcast interview series featuring discussions with speedrunners about their history in speedrunning and gaming and the runs they're passionate about. I am your host, PMC Trilogy, and with me today is Bullets. Bullets, thank you so much for joining me.
It's always, you just remind me, it's always a bit confusing when people introduce me, especially for GDQs. It's always like the people that haven't done it before, like there's a couple people that have always done announcing for me, but like the people that don't, they always go, now here is it, Bullets. And just gets a lot of...
See, I feel like I just got to do the thing, the Spanish contraction thing, where you're like, you got two words and you got two vowel sounds in a row. Just do the vowel sound once. Don't worry about it, you know?
Basically. Probably a good way to do it.
Well, all right. So we got to start off the top. This is the most important thing. The thing that I have been dying to ask you since I think I followed you on Twitter a few months back, and I noticed you're doing this animal challenge thing. What is the origin story of the animal challenge?
So for people that aren't aware, starting this year, January 1st even was the first run I did, but basically it was like, hey, so I'm going to run a game for each animal, like each unique animal, and I'm going to do that for the entire year. I wasn't sure at the beginning if I was going to do it for the entire year or keep going after that, but it's going to end in December. We're gonna close that off then. But so for AGDQ 2019. Was it 2019? No, 2020, right? Because we actually had an in-person GDQ in 2020.
Yeah, there was an in-person.
That was the last one. So
right.
I did Wild Animal Sports Day, which is a game that basically looks like it was made at MS Paint and programmed in MS Paint somehow as well. You just do a bunch of different sports events as an animal, and you run around and do like pole vaulting and tennis, and none of the games work how they're supposed to. So like for tennis, you can just push the net forward and stand right in front of your opponent, and as they serve, you just smack it down repeatedly. It's pretty good. So it kind of started as a joke as we were preparing for that, because we did it as like a relay race with some of my friends. We were like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if I just, because I've already run, I think at that point I'd already run like 7 different games that involved animals in one way or another. So like, wouldn't it be funny if you just ran like animal games for the entire year? But then I realized if I just said, okay, I'm going to run animal games for the entire year, it's going to be like a bunch of dog and cat games, because there's a lot more of those. So I was like, let's do something to make it a little bit harder, and then you have to kind of go out a little bit and look for things. It's like, you have to do a unique animal each time. You can't repeat. So that's kind of the origin of that, and it's gotten more and more difficult as we've gone on, and like the animals that actually have a lot of games for them have been done. So it's become interesting to find new games for it, but it's been a fun experience.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. You've done a variety too. So I asked the origin story. I guess with some animals, you already mentioned it's limited what you can pick just by the nature. When it came to things where there were maybe more options available, did you have any sort of guidelines? Because I feel like one of the things you could do in something like this is go back and say like, well, I know a hedgehog, I know an echidna, I know a chameleon. And like you could just do those really popular games, but it seems like you've really focused more on what it looked to me more like more modern indie games. So I was curious if you had any selection criteria.
Yeah, I really enjoy with this, and people can go look for the list if they want to at some point. It's a pretty varied listing, but I really want to do a variety of things that I haven't done. So one of the games is called Paddle Box, and it's a boxing game, and I've really never even played a boxing game at all. So I wanted to do that, and there's other games I could have done for that as well, but it was really about getting a variety of things, and I really like bringing kind of attention to kind of unique games that aren't played as much. So the opportunity to do that with this is kind of a fun thing. So getting to try those games out, and also say, hey, this might be cool for other people that want to run it, or if they're just interested in the game in general. And I think it makes it more of a challenge. Not going for the easier ones, but sometimes you kind of have to, because it's the only thing that's out there.
And so you mentioned that you're going to be ceasing this, though. Your December, it was a 1-year thing. Do you feel now we're almost at the end of 2020? Believe it or not, time has progressed. Do you feel like you have any sort of, I mean, I think you were already getting into some of your takeaways from it there, enjoying showing off new games, doing the routing yourself. Is there anything else you'd want to add as a takeaway from doing this kind of thing?
It's definitely, it's something I wasn't sure I was going to be able to finish through. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get into like June and be like, okay, like this was kind of this wasn't a good choice, but it was fun to do for 6 months. I wasn't sure if that was going to be kind of how it went, but like being able to commit to something like this and do it and getting to like try a variety of games. And it's been really interesting because I've actually been able to interact with, since the games are fairly small usually, I've been able to interact with a lot of the developers for it, which has been a really kind of interesting experience for a lot of them. And getting like people that they'll look up their game, they'll be like, why is this person speedrun this game, and why are people like, it's a really, I think it's cool for them as well. And some of that has happened as well, GDQ, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later. But you know, them being able to see that is cool, and I think in general it was just that sort of experience of being able to do that and figure out there's all these different games. I spent a lot more time on itch.io than I ever have this year.
Yeah.
So it definitely opened me to the fact that there's a lot of really cool games out there, and you kind of have to look around a little bit, and it's worth it going through all of that, because you can find some real gems and some real things that aren't really gems but are like really interesting and weird and unique in a very different way. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you get the whole variety, you get the whole spread of them, I guess.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That like when you sort of introduce constraints into what you're looking for, it forces you to do what you're doing. You know, look at itch.io and look at other things. But let's go back to let's go to the start. Where does gaming begin for you?
So for me, I don't even know why my grandparents had an N64. I think it was probably my dad's. But basically, whenever we went to visit my grandparents, it's like we should be spending time with our family, but there's an N64 upstairs, so I'm gonna go play Diddy Kong Racing and Donkey Kong 64. And like my main memory of all that, of like especially Donkey Kong 64, is like I remember there was like 2 bosses in that game. That as a kid, I don't remember how old I was. Probably, I don't know, probably elementary school age or something. But like there's 2 bosses in that game I remember that were like really scary to me. There's like the Jack in the Box boss that like turns invisible and like laughs at you and stuff like that. And I remember as a kid being horrified by it. And the what is it? It's like the it's King K. Rool, but it's like a pop-up of him. It's like a cutout of him, and he pops up and you have to shoot at him with a cannon, and like parts of him starts falling apart. And I remember being horrified by that. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that being kind of my first really memorable experience with it, and really enjoying that.
So at what point does that cross over from being just that grandparents thing to being in the home?
I remember we had a 360, and I remember when I was probably a teenager, I played a lot of Call of Duty and stuff like that. I was very, very competitive. Like I did soccer, and I competed a whole bunch over and over. And like I think I did that for so long as like a teenager, going into like becoming an adult, that I eventually got to a point where I'm like, I'm so burned out from like direct competition, doing stuff like that. Like I still have an interest in it, but like I've been doing this for like 5 years, and like it just like stresses me out. So I think that's kind of where I started pivoting over towards kind of indirect competition.
Well, so on that note, that is one of the questions that I usually ask, because so much of what we talk about in speedrunning is single player games with, elements of competition on leaderboards and things like that. But so much of what we talk about is single player games. You already mentioned playing Call of Duty on things like 360. Are there other big multiplayer games for you? MOBAs, MMOs, things like that?
I think for me it was mostly that. I know there's some MMOs I played. I didn't really get into like World of Warcraft or anything like that. I remember City of Heroes and Villains, which I think is gone down at this point. Probably any of the MMOs I used to play have gone down. I for some reason had like a weird fascination with MMOs that were like objectively kind of bad, but I enjoyed them for some reason. So all the MMOs I used to like have probably shut down at this point, but they were fun. But for the most part, I think that was the main multiplayer thing I played and kind of spent a lot of time with.
Another question I usually like to throw out when it comes to this history stuff is, at this point, pretty much for the most part, everyone I interview, we're all adults that doing adult stuff, and so that means that we buy our own stuff. That we're financing our hobby at this point. Was there a point for you that kind of marked that transition? And then that could be one of several things. Could be, saved up allowance money, or saved up other gift money, or got a job and went out and bought a 360 or something, or whatever.
Yeah, for me, it was while I was going to school and going to college and university and stuff like that. It was saving up from like a very, very part-time job while I was studying, and eventually getting a computer with that. And it put me in the situation where I had this computer, but like I really wasn't making a ton of money that I could really freely spend on stuff. So I think that kind of fueled the kind of games I ended up buying. So I think that's how we ended up where we are with the kinds of games I'm speedrunning now, and this whole thing. I can now spend money a little bit more freely, but I'm still like buying like, why would I buy a $60 game when I can buy like $61 games?
It's true. No, sometimes that works out. Well, on that note then, that's a perfect segue. How did you discover speedrunning?
It's a bit of a mix of things. I remember watching Blood Thunder do speedruns. He does BioShock. He does. He's done a whole bunch of things at this point. I think also it's partially through his GDQ run, and I know GDQ probably comes up a lot, but there's a reason for that.
It's the number one answer, but yeah, there's a reason for it. Yep.
Yeah, I remember. I think the real one that really introduced me to speedrunning being like a really, really cool thing was. There was a Beautiful Joe run. I don't know if you've ever seen a run of that, but it's like really, really interesting. Teaminator did that run. I don't know how much he does speedrunning anymore, but like just the commentary he had with it, and kind of it's like, oh, this isn't something where you just like grind a whole bunch and you're just sitting there and not really having fun. It's like this is actually kind of a fun thing, and you can have you can enjoy it a little bit and kind of mess around with it and have a good time with it. Like it was a really entertaining run. It was a really good commentary, and just the game itself was really interesting to watch. So I think that really opened me up to, hey, speedrunning, I could do that. That seems kind of interesting.
And so then for you, what was the thing that pulled you over that line? That was a particular game or some some other event that prompted you?
I think I had a couple false starts with it, and there's a fun, probably embarrassing story I can share with it, because I think the account that I did the run on doesn't really exist anymore. So I did a run of a game called Syndicate, and so there's two Syndicate games. There's the original like 93 one, which is kind of like a strategy real-time thing. So obviously they're like, hey, let's make a AAA game about this, but let's make it a first-person shooter.
Of course.
Of course, why not? It's really cool because you can do like different hacking things and like hack enemies and have them do things, and very cyberpunk sort of look to it. But I remember running that, and I knew nothing about speedrunning. Speedrun.com didn't exist. This was 2012 game. I don't remember when speedrun.com really became the thing that everyone did, but this was the point where if you wanted to know what the world record was, you looked up on YouTube and you searched the game and you tried to see whichever one was the fastest. So I think at that point I was the only one running it, or one person had run it and it wasn't a very fast run. So I ran it, I put a video up of it, and then like probably a month later someone else posted a video of a faster time, and I didn't know anything about speedrunning. I'm like, well, he's got a faster time, I should just remove my video, I guess. I don't know. So there's no visual like video proof of my run anymore, because I think I deleted the only version of it. So that was one false start. I did Battle Block Theater a little bit as well, and eventually I did come back around and actually fully run it, but I just did like the first world, and I think I independently discovered the whole entire, you can enter a level and leave it and it skips the level, and you can keep doing that a whole bunch in it, which is a whole entire different category. But eventually Blood Thunder was running a game called Juarez Gunslinger, which is an FPS with kind of like a slowdown mechanic where you can slow down time and do a bunch of damage and stuff, and there's all this other different stuff with it. But anyways, so that game was a really good first experience because it had runners, so there was a route already, but it wasn't extremely optimized. So I could learn from their video, route it myself, get into like kind of the mindset of grinding things and improving about it, and kind of discovering things on my own and learning about the game. So it was a good it wasn't, hey, here's a game, figure out how to route it all by yourself, but it wasn't, this game is already complete, there's no routing you can do, like everyone's already figured everything out. So it was a nice middle ground, and I think that kind of, I spent months on that game, and now I spend probably a little bit less time on games these days before I move on to a different one, but It was definitely a good first experience. So I think, when was the time beaten for that? The time I had for the record for that stood for probably 3.5 years. I think someone just recently got into it, and they beat it. Obsolete runs shown. They beat it 3 months ago. So
yeah,
but it's cool,
because
they're going on the same kind of journey I was going on, and they're enjoying it and finding the game and learning new stuff and routing it. So like, when people beat my run, it's really cool. Like, I'm waiting for someone to beat my SUPERHOT run. That's the one run left that someone needs to go beat that I have from like when I started speedrunning, that I still have the record in. It's like, I want someone to go there and beat it and improve that time in the end, because I really like seeing the run get improved, and I like seeing people go on the same like fun journey that I went on with it.
So now we've gotten past your first game. We're now into this wide, wonderful world of a number of games that you've done. Since you have such a big list, at least visibly on speedrun.com, probably even more than that, because I know you haven't put every single speedrun from your animal challenge on the speedrun.com.
I've tried.
You've tried. Okay, so I was wondering, because I know some of them are listed as demos.
I've tried from a lot of them.
Yeah, okay.
And I agree with some of the reasons that some of the games are put on. But
no, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
But in that case, I have to ask, of all the speedruns that you've done, what is your favorite?
Okay, so for some background, I was interested, and I was like, okay, how many games have I run? So I tried my best. This is probably not a comprehensive list, but I have 73 that I came up with, looking through like Twitch VODs and YouTube videos, trying to figure stuff out. So I had to think for a while. And I do this every once in a while. I try to think of like what my favorite game that I've run so far. I feel like that my favorite game I'm going to run is going to happen in 2021, because there's a game that I played a demo for called Mail Mole that I think is really, really good. It's got really nice movement.
That was good. I looked that one up on your list, because I noticed it was, but I noticed you recommended it, and I was like, yeah, this could be something.
Yeah, so if that comes out and if anything like the demo and they polish things a little bit, I think it'll be really, really good. But of the games I've run right now, it's really hard decisions between like 3 different games, but I think Yono is probably up there, Yono and the Celestial Elephants, because it's just wild. It's so everywhere. There's so much going on with it. Like I think even explaining the tutorial in the GDQ run that I did of it, I don't think I took a breath for like the first minute, because you just kind of have to go and explain a bunch of things, and then once you finally hit the first like load zone and it kind of fades in, it's like, okay, now I can breathe for like 5 seconds, and now I have to explain another big trick.
Yeah, that run is wild. That really is. I saw it and I was like, oh, this is gonna be just like a cute little isometric puzzle game, and then that elephant starts going places. All right, what about the flip side though? What is your least? And again, I want to, when I ask this, I'm asking for like the one that you enjoy running the least. I'm not saying that like this community is terrible and I want to talk crap about them. No, it's just
I'm not here to out anybody. No, we're not gonna do that.
I mean, you can if you really want, like, and maybe that'll get views, but like, it's up to you.
There's a few that I don't think I've really gone back to very much. I think Brink was probably the worst experience I had speedrunning something. One, because like even so the way that would be really nice to run it is to do multiplayer and stuff like that, but you have to go through a bunch of hoops, because Brink it's a FPS like 2-sided sort of thing where one group is trying to do an objective, the other group's trying to stop them, and you have different classes and stuff, and it's all that fun FPS stuff. But the best way to do it would be like get a group of people and run against the bots and do all the missions and have people you can actually depend on. But it's like 8 on 8, I think. So you're going up against 8 bots, and you have 7 bots on your team that don't know what they're doing. So no matter how good you are at the game, sometimes just all 8 bots will appear at once and just be like, you're going to cease existing, and you're going to lose a bunch of time. So it's a bunch of RNG with AI and your own AI. So it was a mess. But the game was fine, but it's just it's not the most fun to speedrun. But people keep speedrunning. Every once in a while, I'll get a notification. I'll get an email and be like, hey, someone else picked the game up. Like I moderate way too many games on speedrun.com. I don't know how many is at this point.
But like, how many submissions do you really get? Because I moderate. At this point, I have ended up moderating. I imagine it might be similar where, through a combination of like indie, old, obscure games that no one has made a leaderboard for, and games where the previous moderator is a ghost and doesn't exist. Like, I have fallen into some moderation that I'm never gonna have to verify anything for, probably.
Yeah. Like for games that other people are going to run, I am the most happy to just like pass off moderating, because if I'm running a game like, oh, this is going to be cool, and I see a bunch of other people are going to start running it, I'm like, okay, I know how fun it definitely is to just figure out categories and field a bunch of questions, and why is death percent not a category, and why is et cetera, et cetera. Why can't we have all these categories, and why can't we do this or that? And yeah, I don't want to deal with that, so I let other people do it. If literally anyone else does, and they don't seem like they're going to set the board on fire, I'm happy to let them have that. But a lot of the time, I'm one of the only 2 people running it, and I have to do it, and then no one else submits ever, so it's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah. No, the only iron rule that I do usually is, if you want a new category, make a run first, and then I'll make the category.
Yeah, that usually helps a lot.
And then that weeds out all the people asking for various flavors of Just Cause 100%. Then never do a run. Makes my life easy. All right, so one more then in this line of questions would be a game that you would like to speedrun, but for either time reasons or because it doesn't fit with what you're doing, you haven't gotten around to it yet.
Okay. I haven't thought about this, actually. I'm interested. What would be one? So, like, for me, that would end up being a game that probably isn't an animal game that I haven't been able to run yet, because I've been kind of sticking with that. Has there been anything that came up this year? Frantically searching around. Let's see. I don't know if it actually would be fun. The idea of running Destiny 2 is interesting in a small way to me. Somewhere deep inside my brain, I'm like, that would be really interesting. I don't know how well that ended up working out. I recently got into Destiny 2, and it is one of the least friendly starting sort of games, where you get into it and you just kind of drop there. It's like, okay, have a good first day at school. And there's no school there. It's just a crater. It's like, where I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to play this
Hard
game.
Knocks,
But yeah, I'm not. That's one of the things I'm actually contending with right now. Is I'm finishing up this challenge, and it's like, what do I do afterwards? I don't. There's stuff I want to do maybe, but it's been kind of a nice thing propelling me forwards, and now I'm sitting here like, what do I do now? Like, Mail Mall coming out is going to be nice. I can do that. I can continue the animal games forward a little bit longer. But yeah, it's been an entire year to think of what I'm going to do in 2021, and here we are, almost in 2021.
Getting close. Yeah, danger is arising.
Yeah, so that's what I'm figuring out.
Switch tracks then. Sometimes this comes up when I ask people about speedrunning, but I wanted to ask maybe some more. So you got into speedrunning, you've been doing it. When it comes to streaming and doing the apparatus of streaming and things like that, social media, whatnot, how much are you into that part of it? Like, do you feel like you really are, given the opportunity to grow, is that something that you're interested in, or where are you with that?
I think in the end, like, my main goal will always be like doing something I'm enjoying and kind of sharing that with other people. And I mean, I think especially in the last few years, I've definitely prioritized more like, this game seems interesting, I'm gonna run it, I'm gonna share with other people, and hopefully they enjoy it too. But if not, in the end, I think it ends up being more important to kind of do what's gonna make me happy with it. So I mean, in the past, I've done games that like I potentially could have stuck with it, and that probably would have grown the channel, I guess, with stuff like Oblivion or SUPERHOT. But inevitably, it's more for me about just kind of following what I enjoy with it, and kind of figuring out. Like, in the end, I think I'm in a place that I enjoy, where I have people that I can chat with and enjoy these different experiences with, that are kind of open to these new games. And I don't ever want to, and this happens a lot with streamers, and I'm sure you've probably heard or seen this with previous people, where it's like you're kind of boxed in. It's like you're the person that runs Resident Evil, you run FPS games with like wall running mechanics, or you do grapple hook games. Like, this is what you do, and if you're not streaming that, you're going to have 5 people watching you, and it's not going to be a fun experience. So in the end, for me, I want to already have it baked in where people's expectations is, hey, I'm gonna do what seems fun and kind of show people interesting games, and that's pretty much it.
No, that's I mean, that's kind of, again, what I expect, but I think just hearing that from your perspective is good. Another thing I did want to ask is that using the resource of gdqvods.com, I've noticed that you've been very, very consistent. If I'm looking at this right, I think you've pretty much been able to get into almost most of the mainline events. I think
all but one. I believe.
I think AGDQ 2019 is the one that's missing here. But since AGDQ 2017, you've been able to have a run in for many of these events.
Surprisingly. Especially when you look at the games, surprisingly.
Well, so that's what I was going to ask is, first off, like if you have any sort of comments you wanted to say about doing so many runs, feel free. But also, like, if you have any takeaways in terms of like, what have you done to be, because certainly some people are going to be jealous of this. I think they're like, oh, what is this? Who gets lateral damage into and so I'm just curious if you had thoughts about this, because if you've been doing this for this long, you must have thoughts about this.
Yeah, it became a weird thing because it's definitely nothing I expected. My mindset always is, and I know it's Precious probably coming from someone that gets in a lot. It's like I always come into it expecting, okay, nothing gets in. That's my first guess. Nothing gets in. There's never any expectation that it's going to get in. And in the end, like the thing is, if something doesn't get in or things don't get in, they preach it a lot, but it's true. It's like it doesn't mean it's a good or bad game. Things don't fit into schedule sometimes. Like stuff like Yono and the Social Elephants. Like as much as a good game it was, it's anytime it didn't get in, people were kind of upset about it. It's like where does it fit in the schedule in the end? Where do you put the game alongside? It's like it's a cool game, but it kind of exists in a bit of a vacuum. There's not a lot of cute isometric puzzle games with a lot of skips. And they have their general kind of morning indie blocks, which I am a very constant resident of. Mm-hmm. It's basically my blog. Actually, this GDQ, I do get to not be in that block for the first time ever, which is kind of nice. I was going to, this is a bit of a tangent, but
no, please.
I was going to actually have like a late night run, actually 2 late night runs, I think, last GDQ, and it was going to be really nice. And I don't know how much you know about how stuff went down with the event, but we had to
the initial day, like the schedule spiraled out of control. That whole week, me and KZ Frew were like rooting viciously for the schedule to continue spiraling out of control so that we wouldn't have to do our run I was commentating his Miami Vice run at like 4 a.m.
Yeah.
But then they fixed it by the time they got around to us.
Unfortunately, they didn't fix it before they got to me because my run was supposed to be at it was going to be late at night, but I prefer late at night to early morning because I'll just stay up the entire night. And I do it every time. Like anytime I have an early morning run, which is every run at this point, I will stay up the entire night and I'll just be like, okay, gonna do this, and I'm gonna, because I'm so scared of sleeping through it or the schedule shift. Someone just has to literally drop a run and suddenly your run's an hour earlier or something like that. I'm always too worried about that to go to sleep. So, but yeah, so they got pushed back enough where there was at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m., which I felt bad mostly because I had the dev for St. Hazel's Hospital on. I'm like, hey, so you remember how I said it's going to be at this time? It's going to be a lot later. And I was worried that they were going to be like, oh, we can't do that now. They're like, that's even better for me. That works great because I can actually sleep now. I'm like, oh, that's great. I wish I could. But yeah, so back onto the actual question. It's about kind of getting stuff in and kind of thoughts about that. Yeah. I think there's definitely with kind of the commentary for it, I think helps a little bit with it. And I think once you get your first few runs in it and they kind of understand what you're about and kind of what you're doing with it, I think there's a bit of a trust factor there with okay, this person, we don't have to really worry about them, that it's going to be an interesting run and the game seems cool. So I think that's part of it. Like they definitely took a chance on like throwing me in there, and then just kind of kept going, I guess, because I didn't didn't do anything terrible, I guess. But I think a lot of my games kind of fit into like two different places, either like kind of a execution heavy sort of FPS or more of a silly awful block sort of thing in one way or another. So I think that kind of thing, like a lot of the games I ran kind of fit easily into one of those and are usually a bit unique. And I think GDQ definitely is kind of pivoted a little bit, whether it's with the new kind of committee that they have now, because I know they've had a few new members at this point for the games committee, or otherwise just a general focus sort of choice. But I think they've definitely been a lot more willing to put lesser known games in and more indie games in, because I usually go over the schedule when it goes live, which is always interesting. So I usually get spoiled on if I get a game in. So I'll be like, okay, no one spoil me, and someone will be like, congratulations! Oh. Or if people act like, even if people don't say it, they'll just like act really excited. Like when Yono got in, like I knew something had happened, because that was a game I'd been trying to get in for like literally 2 years. But I knew something had happened because the people were like, okay, he's gonna get there soon. He's gonna get there. but yeah, I think that's been really nice, obviously, for me. And I really enjoy the schedules now and going through them, because usually it's a lot of games and people that I've heard of, because just how they've kind of focused. But that was a very unfocused answer about it. But basically, I think it's kind of having kind of proving yourself a little bit with it, and having consistency with that, and just generally the game's kind of slotting in somewhere.
Yeah, no, I think that. I definitely think that jives with a lot of the sense that I've gotten. It was interesting. I think you're right that some of the games committee changes have made it, because we're seeing a lot of new series that have been around for a while but are just getting to GDQ now, either this past SGDQ or this upcoming AGDQ. And then also, I think it was Ecdysis who pointed out on Twitter that this selection of runners for this event is exactly 50%, 50% previous if you include all extra events. So I get counted as a previous because of GDQX, but also new people as well. So it isn't just one or the other, which is good. I mean, it seems like if you're trying to make a really packed schedule with a lot of options, I can definitely understand putting in trusted people to do work, right? Like you need that, so it definitely makes sense. All right, so I feel like we got a lot of history stuff here. Maybe some more general takes. You're doing a lot of, you mentioned it previously that a lot of your runs tend to fall into either kind of more abstract indie games or this first person shooter, very, very high input stuff. And I wanted to ask if you had any approaches to health when it comes to things like your hands, wrists, sitting down a lot, etc.
I've been trying to take that a little bit more seriously, especially this year, and just making sure that I'm taking care of my health with it. Because especially when, like, I got when was this even? Was it in February, or was it? No, it wasn't even February. In January, when I did Crotel Renovations and Frog Detective, I did both those back to back, and Frog Detective is a very click-intensive game, and Crotel Renovations a very mashing-intensive controller game. So both those back-to-back, I immediately had wrist pain and a whole bunch of stuff that. So I'm like, well, if I'm going to continue to do a bunch of very different games, which some of these are probably going to not be very nice for my wrist and hands, I should probably take a little bit better care of them. So I've been trying to do wrist stretches more, or just hand stretches in general, and warm them up, and wear compression gloves, and I'm about to get a new chair that should hopefully. My old chair is a recurring character in the stream, where during runs you can lift it up, but it would just start popping down, and it would never reset back up for like an hour. So I would just have to try to, or I would just be my head would be here. It would not the best for streaming and speedrunning, but it made things interesting. So I got rid of that, and now I just have a really not so good office chair. So hopefully we'll have a slightly better office chair soon. But yeah, I think that's something good to be mindful of. I know I'm 23. I'm not really I'm still young in my brain.
No, you're
So
still young. Do you
I should.
do you want to know how
better
old
take
I
care
am?
of it now.
Do you? Can I get a guess? Can I get a hot take? How old is the host?
I feel like you said it already.
Crap,
and
you might. Yeah, I was gonna say, I might have said it in a previous interview.
Yeah. You said 29, right?
That's flattering. I'll take that. I'm 32, but thank you.
Okay. I said they were 29, I think, and I think that stuck in my brain.
No, but that's okay.
Always guess low. Always guess low.
That's right. That's solid advice.
100%.
No, that's the way to do it. Okay, no, that's good. I mean, I think you're right, which is that you've done certain things that will cause discomfort, and you're taking, and that's always the thing I say usually after the guest gives their answer, which is like, pay attention to those things, because those are the things that, if you ignore them, will become the problems down the road. But if you immediately respond to that by doing the stretches, by doing the preventative care, by getting a nice chair. The one thing I'll say, I don't know what kind of chair you're thinking about getting. I think the racing chairs, the DX racers and stuff like that, those are all mistakes because they constrain the way you sit.
I had basically what was an off-brand one,
okay.
and I would agree that they are a mistake.
Yeah,
and I wouldn't recommend it. So I'm just getting something that's just like an ergonomic sort of office chair sort of thing with it.
No,
so
that's good.
We'll see how that goes. It was a lot. It was more than But if it lasts for like 4 years or however long it lasts, and it's comfortable, and like I'm more healthy because of it, it's worth an investment into your health if you're going to invest into anything.
Yeah, especially if you're going to be playing games, streaming, working from home, which may be the case for a lot of people right now. I know for me, to kind of peek behind the camera, like I basically sit in a control center all day. Like I'm at my office, my streaming setup right now, and then like right there behind me, that's my work computer. That's where I'm gonna do my day job. So I don't get very far in this chair. But it's important to invest for sure. So another thing, you already mentioned before some that you use controllers for some games, and I wanted to get some controller hot takes, because it sounds like you've played on a few different consoles, and so I was going to ask if you had a favorite controller.
I think mostly what I've ended up using is a DualShock 4. I don't have a super varied sort of experience with them, and I definitely play a lot more. I'm a lot more of a mouse and keyboard sort of person than controller, but there's definitely a few games where it's like, no, this game you definitely need to you need to play in controller. It's just more comfortable and it makes more sense to do, and it's easier to do.
Or I mean, sometimes you just don't have proper keyboard mouse support, especially for some games that you've probably played.
And with the games I run,
yeah.
It can be a bit dicey with support for certain things.
So, okay, well then before I ask about keyboard mouse stuff, do you have a flip side of that though? Do you have a least favorite controller?
The $20 controller I got right now. Legitimately the 360 controller probably, but currently this one with its like weird, we haven't talked about it actually on the show. We talked about it beforehand. Mm-hmm. Should I share the fun Slowdrive story with the controller?
Oh, please. Yeah, go ahead. Well, yeah, mention that. We're here. We're in controller land right now.
So, I don't know if it's because of a Windows update or because of like a Unity strangeness, but basically the controller I've been using for Slowdrive, which is one of the two games I'm doing for AGDQ 2021, is just suddenly decided to stop registering inputs correctly from my DualShock. So I started to panic, obviously, because it's like, well, I was like, I'm gonna derust this right beforehand. I have a month before, I'll be fine. And then immediately I realized my controller was not working, and it only would register the controller if I replugged it in. And then after you replug it in, like the button to confirm things is like the trigger, and like the button to it just started spinning as well. It did that whole thing. So I thought it was a Steam issue. Tried to fix that. So I just kind of assumed it was doing bad things with the DualShock controller. So I got a different controller, just a cheap $20 controller from Xbox controller from Amazon, and it has like weird analog stick drift where it'll just randomly take you into the ocean every once in a while when it feels like, and so it's a bit of a mess. But I think the 360 controller in general by design is the one I don't particularly like out of just design wise.
Yeah.
Personal experience, like right now, like having to do this run for GDQ, I'm definitely not liking this controller right now.
Well, so on the keyboard mouse side of things, obviously there's a whole universe of keyboard and mouse tinkering out there. Are there any things that are important to you when doing keyboard mouse stuff? Mechanical switches, things like that, or? Yeah,
I'm actually not too picky with switches. I kind of went from like very like blues and like really loud switches, and I've gone downwards, probably because of streaming, but also just general. I went from one that sounded like basically like a typewriter to one now that is a lot more comfortable. But I think a lot of it for me is just kind of having something, that doesn't really get in the way and just kind of comfortable. I have kind of larger hands, so the mouse I've pretty much stuck with the same mouse for a while because I found one that kind of works well and I did stick with it. But like the keyboard, I've gone through a lot of them, and I had one keyboard that I kept trying to get. It was like a 60% keyboard, so it doesn't have anything but like the letters and the numbers above it, and none of the function keys or
no numpad.
Yeah, so it's basically like you just take off 60% of the keyboard. So, and I kept trying to do that, and the company kept sending me broken ones. So I have 3 broken ones now here because they didn't want me to send them back. They're just like,
yeah.
So I have 3 sitting around right now, and I'm not sure if it was because my old computer was possessed by a ghost, or if it's actually keyboards, which I kind of feel bad about now. So I need to like get onto that now. Yeah. But I found a keyboard I like. So,
okay.
Yeah. Oops.
Sometimes it'd be like that. All right, one more general speedrun question before I maybe ask about some of the specific games. But I wanted to ask, do you feel that you have any particular mission statement when it comes to your endeavors in speedrunning?
I think accessibility is probably the big thing for me. I think it's like, hey, if there's any game you like, if there's anything you want to do with it, there's a category you like, there's a game you like, if you've not done speedrunning, I want games that I run to be accessible to people and be interesting to people, and I want people to see a variety of games and see that it's possible to pick something up and do it. And I want people to understand that when you're starting out and you're playing a game like SUPERHOT, where it's like, okay, there's like, I think at this point there's probably like 100 runners or something for it. You're not competing against first place at the beginning. You're not sitting there, and you don't need to immediately try to go for the record for it. It's a self kind of competition. It's improving yourself. It's enjoying kind of things with the community and kind of learning with them. And just, I think the most important things to me with speedrunning has been like the people I've met with it, and kind of the interesting challenges with it, and seeing other people that I am friends with or enjoy watching, like seeing them progress and seeing them improve has been kind of the most gratifying thing.
No, I think that's a good answer. The longer I do this, the more I feel like, so much of the payoff for people is the social element of it, being able to approach those challenges, discover games, et cetera, et cetera. Because I've noticed, many such groups. I think, you kind of suggested already that the people who watch what you do are already, sort of informally at least one such group of people that are, discovering runs and enjoying them as speed runs. Well, all right. So now I'm going to transition from there into asking about some of these. Now, some of the games that you did this year, like Slowdrive, were things that you discovered by doing the Animal Challenge. But I want to get some stories on how you got into some of these other games, in particular, because it's one that I think maybe people, remember you doing at a GDQ, and because you still have the top time for it. How did you get into running SUPERHOT?
So I remember when SUPERHOT came out, and there was a runner called Disco, and he was at the top of the leaderboard for that. And I remember watching the run and being really impressive, because I was still very much into running FPSs at that time. I think obviously Call of Juarez was the first one I'd done. I'd done Brink. What else had I done? Call of Juarez, the Cartel, which I would never recommend it. Oh, maybe that's worse than Brink, actually. Maybe I have to switch my previous answer. That's pretty bad. I don't know. It was actually, I have such a good memory of running a co-op run with that. and the game basically just falling apart while we were running it. So maybe, yeah, we'll stick with Brink for the other answer. But I was trying a bunch of FPS stuff, and I saw it, and I thought it would be pretty cool to eventually do. And then I came back a few months later, and I think Disco was still at the top leaderboard. I'm like, wow, he's really, really good at this game. I should look into this and pick it up and see how I can do it. And I remember the very first time I streamed it, and I was trying to kind of do runs of it and do my best. There was a runner by the name of Ellie that came over and just like sat in chat, and just the entire time I was there just answered questions and helped me figure stuff out and gave suggestions and kind of just rooted me on. One of the better runners of the game, and she was very, very nice about it and just very supportive. And I think that experience immediately was like, okay, so like there's some good people involved with this, and there's like, you know, people are willing to help. And I think that experience alone was mainly where I went, okay, like it's actually really important once you're in these communities and like, you know, supporting other people and like, you know, new runners, like you can, if you're one of the better runners of the game and you're kind of helping people out that are just getting into it, I think that leaves like a good impact on people and like really sits with people. And it's like, wow, this person that put a bunch of time in this game is like taking time to help me out with this and, you know, make sure that I feel welcome in the community. I think that's kind of where that kind of set up, because like before that, I think pretty much everything I'd run was like pretty low runner count and like not really anyone active with it. So I think that was my first experience really with like a real active community with it. So I think that was really what drew me in for running SUPERHOT.
And then, but you stuck with it a lot too. I mean, you know, I assume even at that time, having the number of runners it did, that it was fairly competitive to get some of those top times. Yeah,
it was. There was a lot of really good runners, and I think there's still been a lot of really good runners with it, even before and after. Where I think eventually they could have gotten the record and done stuff with that. But yeah, there was, especially at the time when I was doing it before the game had kind of aged for a bit and been out for a while. I think there's a lot of runners for it. It was a fairly active game on speedrunner.com for a while, and people were doing all different sorts of categories and trying things out and still figuring out the levels and trying to get through it and do deathless runs of it. So it was a really, really interesting experience, and it's probably the best experience I've had with like a speedrunning community.
Now, I'm pretty sure you haven't done too much with this in a while. Is there anything that you consider undone that would cause you to return to this game?
The one thing I'd want to do with this game, so when I ran it, and unfortunately, one of the only bad things with the game is that no matter how many times we try to make a load remover, the game does not want to let you make a load remover for it, which is really unfortunate. So loads are counted with that, and I had, at the time, I still had the first computer I had bought by myself. It was not a very good computer. It was very long load times, but so my 1818, which is the record right now, was on a very slow computer, and we discovered, I think actually no, they released Japanese and Chinese as languages for it, which are actually like, you wouldn't think of it would be a time save on a game like that, where it's like a FPS sort of IL based game, but it ends up being like 15-20 seconds of time save from just changing the language. So legitimately, if I just did the same run but with a different language, it would have just been sub 18. So I think knowing that has always been like in the back of my head. It's like, that'd be really nice to do the same exact run on just like a faster computer and with the correct language. Because like all the other times, like if you go down the list, I'm pretty sure all the other times are in like any of the ones that, pretty much all the ones that followed afterwards are pretty much in Japanese or Chinese at this point. So. It's one of those things like, darn, it'd be really nice if I had done that run a little later when they came out with that, or when I had a better PC, but...
You know, I mean, that's always going to be the case, though, right? To some extent, yeah, things are always going to change.
I tend to not have too many regrets with like what I'm doing. Once I've kind of done a game and finished it up, I'm usually pretty happy with it, and usually happy with other people kind of coming through and improving the time and doing stuff with it. I don't come back to games too often. I do sometimes, depending on it. But once it's been a little bit since the game, I've done it stuff with the game, and that muscle memory is kind of gone. I'm pretty okay with leaving things be.
All right, let's talk about another game then. I got the impression from listening to what you've been saying Was Yono a game that you picked up before the speedrun challenge, before the animal challenge?
There was 7 games that I picked up beforehand. So I picked this up in 2017, right at the end of 2017.
So what led you to pick up Yono then?
It was. Oh, I remember. It was there was a run at BSG, which is a speedrunning marathon that Kinnan did, I believe. Let me triple check that to make sure. But I believe, Kinnan did a BSG run of Yono. And I think before the run was even over, I'd already bought the game. Like, I was just watching it. It's like, this is a really adorable game, but it has so many cool skips and interesting stuff going on with it. It's got, there's so much interesting stuff going on. And the game hadn't even been like completely like figured out, and people hadn't, it hadn't been, we hadn't found a lot of the skips that we use now. So going through that, and already at that point having it at a point where it's got a lot of interesting stuff going on with it, I was like, this is a really cool game. This isn't like anything I really run at this point, but it's really cool, and I'd like to be a part of this. And at least I'll play it, maybe try some of the tricks. It'll be fun, but if I don't run it, I think it'll still be a good experience.
And so, but seems like a game that I feel like maybe, because you talked about coming to a game and leaving a game, it seems like this is one that you stuck with, because you tried for a while to get into GDQ, and eventually you got into SGDQ 2020. And then I also noticed that your current PB for the main category, and I'm going to call No Major Skips the main category because that's what it looks like, that's post GDQ. So this is also a game that I think you've even PB'd again in after GDQ. What's kept you coming back to this one? I mean, it sounds like what you already said was just that it impressed you right away, but clearly, even upon playing and running it, you've stuck with it. Yeah,
part of it is people would keep finding things and keep finding interesting skips for it, and I've done my best trying to keep an updated guide for the game. I think at this point it's a bit of a lost cause. People have keep finding new things. There's some interesting stuff with tilting Yono, where Yono will. It probably takes a lot to explain it, but basically Yono just tilts upwards and then flies into the air. It's interesting stuff, but people keep finding different tricks over and over again, and interesting stuff with it, and the community keeps kind of going up and down. But it's one of those games, like the muscle memory is like really ingrained still. So like I can just come back to it, and after maybe like an hour of doing runs, I feel like comfortable doing most of the tricks and skips with it. And recently, there's actually been a couple runners that have picked it up and started finding new things and really improving it, which has been really cool. And I actually had one of the runners, I think, discovered it through GDQ and then figured out about the animal challenge I'm doing, and actually asked for like a copy of like the games, like the list of all the games I'd done, and wants to do something kind of similar, which is kind of something I didn't expect, but it'll be really interesting to see if they do something along those lines. So they'll probably do a lot more games than I did. I at this point I've done 34 games this year, which feels like a lot, but also feels like I could have done. Well, we can maybe like do a small little retrospective thing about it, but I always, you're always going to regret like not doing certain games for it. But I think mostly I'm pretty happy with what we ended up doing for it, even though there's always going to be one game or two games I didn't get around to.
Well, so I will get to that, but I did want to ask for Yono specifically, because this is a game. Yono is definitely one of those games where you have like a lot of specific tricks where you're using, deploying certain techniques in certain locations to skip things, do things out of order, and I wanted to give one of two. You can answer one of two questions here. One being, what is your favorite bit of tech, or alternatively, if there are things that you have found or routed into the game, something that you wanted to brag about having discovered or otherwise put into the speedrun.
Let me think. So for Yono has a lot of tricks going on with it, and interesting stuff. There's so many different things. Which one? Thinking through all of them and like literally running through the game in my mind and trying to figure out which one makes the most sense. I think the fact that you end up skipping 2 worlds in the game at the same exact time, because you're supposed to go through one world to get to the second world, do something there, and then a gate unlocks that's in the first world that you go back to. So now you can literally dash Yono up a ramp until Yono keeps tilting more and more and more, and then you move forward and Yono just flies upwards and goes over the gate. And we used to even do that with a key, and now we've even made it even quicker. So it's like, it's just been funny, like the one-upping stuff. Like the main category, or the main category used to be called no early Queen's Dungeon. Because any percent, there's a skip to get through to, or there's gate skip, and then we discovered another skip for that, and called it gate skip, and it just has kept going that sort of direction, where like you keep finding skips for the original skips, and going over and over and over again. So it's just funny, the arms race of tricks that just in general happens with the game. But I think just like the tilting is hilarious to me. Just being able to kind of decide to launch Yono over things if you want to. It's a little finicky, but it's just hilarious to see when it works right.
Now wait, so just to be clear, were you involved in routing some of that stuff, or was that just sort of like, this is the funniest stuff we got in the run? Someone called Chippy that doesn't even run the game, I think, ended up discovering it. I think Activate and Chippy both discovered it and like just posted a video. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is going to change a lot of things. This is unfortunate. But so I've helped a little bit with some of the routing and finding tricks for things, and I've the final part of the game, I think, was, so the entire game was made by a single dev, except for the music, which seems like kind of a bit of a common trend with a lot of single dev games. Usually the music ends up going somewhere else, but I think the final area ended up being made in a few weeks, or like in a month or something like that. So that ends up being like probably the most broken part of the game. So we've all kind of sat there, and there'll be a room that doesn't have a trick, and it's like, okay, let's go find one. This room isn't broken enough. Let's go find a skip. Yeah, it was funny. One thing I noted during your SGDQ 2020 commentary was that I think at one point you had remarked that your I think then I hopefully maybe still, but then partner at least had found a trick, which I just thought was kind of interesting, that you had someone who you were probably talking to about things ended up figuring out something on their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's in the chat.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I was like, this could be I could be stepping on a landmine by bringing this up, but I'm gonna do it anyway because I love doing that.
Yeah, but we basically would just sit in voice calls and just like wander around the game and just try to find stuff for it and just kind of talk about stuff, which is like such a cool thing to be able to do with somebody that you're close to. Like share, you don't have to share a hobby with someone else. Like, you can appreciate what they're doing with it and like support them, but you don't necessarily have to take part in it with them. But being able to do that is like such a nice experience and really cool.
No, absolutely. All right, so that was Yono. Another game that I wanted to zero in on specifically, because it is so one of the games you're doing for AGDQ 2021 is BPM, bullets per minute. And what's the story with this one? Because I feel like this is more towards where you started. This is first person shooter ish.
Yeah, I think I talked a little bit about. I like tweeted out because I realized that I'm like, so this GDQ is basically like me like solidified to a perfect degree, which is like an animal game that kind of seems silly and janky but has some cool stuff with it and is pretty fun, and then an FPS game that is very stressful. But I've never run a roguelike really properly before. I think this is the first one. So the obvious answer is it's got bullets in the name, so I had to run it, sort of thing. But the real answer is I had known about the game for a while, and kind of the mixing of roguelike and first person shooter and the music aspects of it was really interesting. So I didn't go into it intending to speedrun it, but I think I kind of got wrapped up into that a little bit and ended up submitting it kind of as I don't know if this will get in, because it is a roguelike, so it does have permadeath. If you die, you're dead, and having a run get have to end a run early because of that. I don't think the GDQ staff appreciates that too much.
I don't think so.
I've never done a run for a GDQ that has a chance of like really severely like having to end the run early.
Yeah.
Like I've had runs where like stuff can go wrong, but never where the whole entire run can go wrong if you just kind of like look away for a second. So it's going to be an experience. It's going to be interesting, but it's fun to go back to kind of what I was doing before and do something FPS related and kind of stick with that. So I think that was part of it. Is it kind of it was interesting to me in that regards, just casually, and then also as something to speedrun. It seemed like an interesting area to explore. Since I'm doing a lot of different stuff, might as well try a roguelike FPS music game.
Now, with this game, I noticed that I'm not too familiar with the game, but it certainly seems like, looking at the leaderboard, kind of looking at the general gist of the game, that being a roguelike, this is one of those things where you have a lot of different possible characters, configurations, things like that. Was there a particular reason that you settled with the one that you're going to be doing for AGDQ?
So I submit Njord, so the entire game, you have like a secondary ability and like a main ability, and his two abilities are, one is a shield that stops you from taking damage, and the other one is regeneration that heals your health. So like it's very, when I submit stuff, you have a lot of people that will submit and their estimate will be like very, very dicey and like very close to it, to the PB, and like they'll really hope everything goes right, and I kind of go the opposite way. It's like I really stick with the 99% of your runs should be underneath this once you're like derusted and ready to go. Like I really stick with that. So same thing with the character. It's like I want to give this run the best chance it has to finishing. Like you could pick the one-hit kill character where you can fly around and run around with the shotgun and anything will instantly kill you, sort of thing. You could do that. It'd be really cool. But the game came out pretty recently. I don't think that's a very good choice to do, and I think it made more sense to be like, okay, if other people in the future want to do like a race where we're doing those two characters or do something interesting with that, like they can do that. But I might as well submit this thing, and it'll be kind of a safer option. It'll be maybe something interesting that people haven't seen yet.
No, that's cool. So, and now you mentioned that, do you think that this will be the sort of the full scope of what you want to do with BPM as a speedrun? Because you mentioned that you could do the glass cannon thing, and certainly other people can do that, but that's not really quite your thing.
Yeah, I've not been doing BPM as much. It's hard to grind out roguelike games and stuff like that. You're definitely, so there's no way in roguelikes. Usually there's like some sort of item for mapping that'll like kind of give you an idea where to go, or some sort of way to do that, or etc. with that. There's not really that with this game, so you're contending with the RNG of getting a good build and the RNG of getting good rooms, like rooms that have not many enemies, and then contending with getting good RNG with the map. So there's a lot of stuff compounding with that, and I've kind of fallen out of interest a little bit with really RNG heavy games, since like my least favorite game ended up being like a very, very RNG heavy game. And I think the more I was playing it and spending a lot of time with it, I was like, I enjoy this for what it is, but I think this is more a game that's kind of fun to show off and kind of fun for that reason. And maybe eventually when they patch it a little bit and add some stuff to it and make it a little bit more balanced for running, and you can race people and like do the same seat or something like that. But and also one thing about it, I don't think there's really like a generation, what would it be called, like an algorithm to it, where it's like, okay, like the boss room is going to be like this many rooms away from the central room, or like you can kind of guess it a little bit. Like there's a game like Enter the Gungeon, which is also another roguelike speedrun. There's like actual kind of layouts to it, and you can learn that sort of thing, which I think is really interesting. So I think because it's missing that, it makes it a little bit hard for me to want to put a lot of time into until it kind of hits like a bit of a solidified state. But I think it's cool to show off. I think it'll be fun.
So I want to give you, because there's a bunch of games we could possibly talk about here, I wanted to give you just sort of an open spot here, because some other ones, there's Slowdrive we already mentioned in passing, Lovely Planet, some other games. Is there a game that you'd want to bring up where you're like, I can't believe I got into speedrunning this, like this is a funny story of how this ended up happening? There's so many like weird, just strange games that I didn't think I'd run with the speedrunning challenge. I'm just looking through all of them. Yeah, take a second.
there's a game called Snails, which I've been actually submitting to GDQs, and I think it eventually will get in as like an awful block game.
Yeah,
because it's basically like I think they actually specifically made it to look like a PS1 game with like tank controls and like really shoddy, like intentionally not so good graphics and really kind of clunky controls, and you're playing like a 5-year-old that knows kung fu that can fight off the giant snails that are invading the earth. And it's like, it's a weird experience. And I think it was one of the, like, so my general mindset of the challenge is you usually play as the animal. And I don't usually like it when it's like a game where the entire game is like killing the animal, because that seems kind of
Cabela's is right out. Yeah.
So, but like for Snails, it was just such a weird, strange, unique, odd game that I was like, we're gonna run it anyways. It's a mess. There wasn't a lot in the way of skips and really crazy stuff happening with it, but it just like, as an experience, as like a tour guide taking you through the museum and being like, all right, these are the big snails that come chase after you, and this is the map where you can only see 5 feet in front of you inside of the school, and you have to go one side of the school and then the other side of the school and then back the other side of the school and back the other side of the school, and then you can leave because you have to collect keys every time. And this is the room where all these fast snails gang up on you and kill you repeatedly, but it's okay because you have a few lives and you maybe will be able to hit them a couple times. It's fun as a like exhibition of this game exists and you should know about it because I had to know about it and now you do too.
It was interesting though. I did watch that one, and it was definitely, I mean, I love the PS1 vibe, and certainly Snails filled with that, so that was very, very interesting. No, that's a good one. So as always with a lot of these, I'm going to be if you're watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify, iTunes, whatever after the fact, in the description there will be links not only to bullet stuff, but also, of course, to all these videos. So I'm gonna try and put a bunch of PBs, GDQ VODs listed in there. A lot of them are very, very fun watches. So let's start winding down a little bit. One of the things I like to do is get a little connective tissue between interviews, carry a question forward from my previous guest to my next guest, and an Eternal Enigma had this question for my next guest. Which was, what food changed your life that you thought you would hate before you ate it? Oh,
that's a very interesting, multi-layered question.
Yes.
full of interesting things going on.
You thought you wouldn't like this food, but then you had it, and you're like, "Damn, my life is different now."
I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think, what would it be? Something I didn't think I would like. I'm really bad with trying new foods and trying new things, and I'm really bad about getting enough fruits and vegetables. So I was like, I'm gonna try a smoothie with all these different vegetables and stuff. Different fruits and stuff in it. And it's probably not going to be very good, but I'm gonna try it out. And that actually was like a pretty good thing, and actually I enjoyed it surprisingly. And I've actually been doing that a lot more. So okay. I can't get the fruits that I need normally, but there we go. It's changed my life for probably the better, but depending on where the smoothie comes from.
Right. Yeah, depends what else is in the smoothie too, right?
Yeah,
not just the fruit, but
take the good with the bad a little bit.
Yeah. All right, so now this does mean that I do need from you a question for my next guest. The next guest will be a speedrunner. I'm not going to tell you anything else though. Doesn't have to be about speedrunning. The question can be about anything, but it will be a speedrunner answering the question.
So, I was thinking about this a little bit because I'm an avid watcher. Mm-hmm. So I was prepared. Thinking about it. I was throwing a bunch of different things together, and I was thinking about it. And I was like, well, if you, I'm gonna to make this interesting because I'm sure this is potentially something that's come up before. Mm-hmm. So, describe your ideal speedrun, but you have to do it in the way of like a bad gaming article where you have to only relate it to other games. So you would have to say it's the, you have to have the, it's the cute animals from Yono, but it's like the high octane movement of like Lovely Planet. You can only relate it to other games.
Okay.
And if you want to do a hard mode, you can only relate it to games you've run. if it's someone that has run a lot of games.
Okay, this could work really well.
Or go really terribly. One of the two.
Yeah.
And either way, it'll be great.
This person's gonna have a pool to draw from. I'm gonna DM you.
Oh, nice.
DM you. They're gonna have interesting, this like sort of two areas of games that I think this person runs. So, but that'll be for next week. That should be fun. What future stuff? You already mentioned Mailmole, of course. Mailmole, big 2021. Any other upcoming releases that you are looking forward to playing?
I think that's the main one. I know Fogs just came out, and I was just playing that with my girlfriend. Have you not heard of Fogs before?
I have not. Please tell me about it.
So, do you know the show Cat Dog?
Yes.
Imagine if it was Dog. There's just a dog on both sides, and each person plays one of the dogs, and you have to run.
You know what? Were you playing this last night or something?
I was.
Okay, I think I might have seen this. Yeah. Okay.
It's pretty good. It's a great game. I don't know if it's gonna get speedrun at all because it's a pretty long game. Like surprisingly long. Like it's like $25, but so I was like, hopefully it's a little bit to it. But I'm surprised. Like we played for a couple hours, and I think we got through half of the first world, and there's like 3 or 4. So surprisingly, a lot of game with it, and it involves an animal. So basically perfect. Now, is this like a same screen co-op kind of thing, or you would need multiple copies of the game? I think you can do remote play with Steam, which I don't know if you need both people to have a copy for that. Okay. But I think we both do. Right. But I know you can play it single player, and you can like switch control between the two of them. But it definitely is the most fun if you play with either someone that you know really well or someone you don't really know very well and don't either you're both doing the same thing at the same time without having to talk about it, or like you're pulling against each other trying to go opposite directions. Either way is great. So.
I'm just thinking that my wife loves dogs and loves our dog, and she once in a while will bother me to want to do something co-op, and so this. But she does some gaming. Like she's been super in Animal Crossing for like a year now, or however long Animal Crossing has been out, and so I was just like, oh, could this be content? I think so.
Yeah, you can do 2 people on a single screen with like a couple controllers. So I think I honestly think it'd be a good game even for someone that doesn't really.
Right. Yeah. Too. I mean, and I think I saw it too, and it to me it looks like even if you were screwing up, it looks fun. You know? So that's good. That's good. Bullets, where can people find you? What should they be looking for?
I'm on twitch.tv/isBullets. That's the main place. I have a YouTube that is completely misnamed because I had it a while ago for what was I even posting? Like Team Fortress 2 stuff.
I was wondering about that because you have it in your overlay on screen, and it's like Fall Guy 778899 or something.
Yeah, I think it's like Fail Guy 667788 or something dumb. It's. I think nowadays people think it's Fall Guy, which is funny.
Right. Obviously, that's what I thought. So yeah.
15. It's like maybe it is. Maybe
came back around.
The best game of 2020, the most popular game of 2020. So, but yeah, so that's been around for a while. But yeah, Twitch is mostly where I do everything, and I usually post highlights of stuff on YouTube. I do a little bit of like discussion videos about certain things, like for GDQ things or like speedrunning topics and stuff like that. But mainly Twitch for actual speedrunning content.
Cool. Well, again, as I mentioned earlier, all those links will be available in the description if you're watching us on YouTube, listening on iTunes, Spotify, what have you. Bullets, thank you so much for giving me your time.
Of course, a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, this is really delightful. But if you are a regular listener, then you are well aware that I do need one more thing from you. Which is, of course, that I'm going to use a cheesy catchphrase like "Let's boost on out of here," and then I will need your best rocket engine noise. Are you ready?
I'll try my best.
Okay, folks, thank you so much for listening. Let's boost on out of here. Good. Excellent. Perfect. That was
There we
delightful.
go.
Folks, if there is anyone, do you have time? If there's a question or two? Okay, folks, if you are in chat and you want to get a live answer to your live question, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Hot takes about animals and non-animals. Actually, that's everything. So
Yeah, animals, not animals. You know, you can do.
I do speedrun things that aren't animals. Actually, that was a funny thing. I was like, well, after I started this, I over my speedrunning career, I've been known for like a billion different things. Like I was the SUPERHOT guy, and I'm the animal speedrunning guy, and I was the Yono elephant guy. I was Pet the Puppet. Oh, I was definitely the Pet the Puppet the party guy for a little bit.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, I remember at one point, I think it was right after I did Frog Detective, and I was like, this could be a fertile ground for more speedruns. And then I when I was looking around at itch.io, I think I noticed Pet the Pup, and I was like, has anyone speedrun this? And I was like, yes, Bullets has.
Yeah.
What you expect?
Plenty of people. A lot of people. There's like a thread at one point where they were like, what is a good free game for, like, it was weird. It was like, what is a good free game for like my students to speedrun? And I'm like, what is the context of this question? I don't understand, like, why are they speedrunning stuff? One person like Pet the Puppet party, and they're like, I don't think they'd like that. The teacher was like, I don't think they'd like that. I don't think that's they wouldn't go for that. It's like, it's a game about petting dogs. Everyone loves
that. All right, Joyfully asks, what is your fave animal? Fave animal.
It's so hard to. It's the same thing with like picking a favorite speedrun, because it's like picking a favorite child, and it's like I have 70-something children. How do I pick one? It's like, you know. There's too many good ones. I just think, you know, red pandas are great. They're just lovely and just so weird and great. Like, weird in the way of how they react to things, and like they try to stand up on two legs to look larger, and it doesn't work, but it's hilarious. They're just, if you've ever seen gifs of like someone like scaring them and then like going onto their hind legs,
they're very good. Actually, that reminds me, as I know, I'm in the audience too. Are you someone who goes to zoos? Are you an avid zoo goer at all, or?
Surprisingly not. You would think so, but no, not really. Actually, like I like a lot of animals, but I'm not so much. Not really zoo or like amusement park person. Definitely, I'm not a very good roller coaster person either. So.
Yeah, I'm not much for those at all, but my partner has very much gotten me into going to the Philadelphia Zoo, and we've gone to other zoos. You know, actually, when we were still traveling, you know, in another time and place, you know, we would hit up zoos like San Diego and the Bronx and etc. So, all right, Xeon asks, is there ever any animal in a game that makes you feel attached towards it? Like it's like now your best friend.
I'm trying to think of, was there an animal this year that I like didn't have strong feelings about, but after I ran it, I was like, this is a really, really great animal. I discovered this year that people really like axolotls, which I didn't realize. Like, I was like, okay, axolotl is going to be a hard game to find a game for, so I looked up in itch.io, and like a dozen things came up, which doesn't sound like a lot, but like when you're looking up, like, I need a game about caterpillars or ferrets, it's like, and you get like one game, it's like, well, I guess I get to do this game.
Yep, there you go.
The amount of people that really like axolotls was surprising.
I was not prepared for the Minecraft axolotl discourse. I don't know. Did you notice that? Like, I wasn't ready for that.
Yeah, I did a little bit of Minecraft speedrunning at one point, but yeah, I was not aware that everyone was going to be like so happy about the axolotl, but I was with them. I'm excited.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. I've been sort of weirded out because Minecraft is one of those things. Like I feel like I'm a trendsetter sometimes, because Minecraft, you know, I played early on, like a lot of other people, like 2011, 2012, and now it's becoming very big in speedrunning specifically. I feel like this year has been very big for it, and then kind of the same thing with like MOBAs in general. Like I played original Dota in 2005, 2006, and you know, in 5 years later, it's become a huge thing. So it's just very weird that I now have like a 5-year-old nephew who's like, hey, Uncle PMC, can you tell me how to make magic potions? And I was like, excuse me? Magic potions were in the version of Minecraft that I played? Sorry. Can't do that.
But yeah, I think for the original question, I finally figured out. Like, I'm not super big on bugs. Don't like bugs too much. But I ran a game called Ginseng Hero, which you play as a beetle and you run around with like a sword and hit things repeatedly. But it's like actually like it made beetles like kind of adorable and cool looking and interesting. So I think that's probably a decentish answer for that.
No, that's pretty reasonable. All right, I think that might about wrap it up.